I recently went to my very first Coachella and it was such an incredible experience. It was a huge deal for me because this was the very first time ever in my life I got to travel across the country for one of the world's largest music festivals, and this was like no other. My friend and I got to see so many awesome artists, meet tons of great people, and do so much more. It's sad Coachella is done, but all good things must come to an end. For those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Anthony, and if you're new to my channel, welcome. Don't forget to subscribe for some future content. Alright, without further ado, let's jump right into the video. So before I get into it, I already know that there's hundreds of other videos of people sharing their past and their current experience of Coachella, but it doesn't hurt for me to share my recent experience, so why not? Anyway, with that being said, my friend Gabriel and I, we went to Coachella during weekend one, and oh my god, there were hundreds of thousands of people. There was an estimated number of over 150,000 people in attendance for that weekend alone. At the same time, it was both exciting and intimidating seeing that large number of people at Coachella. So I saw so many great artists at Coachella during that weekend. My favorites by far were Blink-182, Bad Bunny, Rosalia, Porter Robinson, and Frank Ocean. Blink-182, in my opinion, was probably the very best performance of weekend one. They were a surprise guest last minute, a day before the festival, so everybody was completely caught off guard by that. And the Sahara stage was packed to the brim with 25,000. Bad Bunny put on a great show. He brought out Post Malone midway through his set, but the only problem there was Post Malone's guitar cut off halfway, and eventually no sound was coming out of his guitar. But it was so cool at the same time that Post Malone came out during his set. Every other artist I've watched was Beanie, Youngblood, Becky G, Gorillaz, Eladio Carrion, and a few other artists. The most I was excited for was Frank Ocean, but most of you probably know what went down. Frank Ocean was an hour late and he stopped his set early because he went over curfew. His set was very confusing, it was all over the place. He did sing some songs and then he also lip-synced a handful of his songs. He also had a DJ, not hating on that, but again, it was just confusing and nobody was expecting his set to be a little bizarre. But a lot of people were complaining that he ended his set, but I'm just happy I got to see Frank Ocean. It was the very first time in over 6 years he got to be on stage again, and I was just glad that I got to see him in person. So for Frank Ocean, I was standing against the barricade, not at the very front of the stage. There were some people that were standing on the grass right in front of me as I was up against the barricade. And one of those people ended up to be Lisa from Blackpink and Paul Tollett, the founder of Coachella. Definitely was not expecting any of those people to be right in front of us, but it was still cool. Other celebrities that were there, but they were all the way up on the front: Kylie Jenner, Kendall Jenner, David Dobrik, Madison Beer, Camila Cabello, Shawn Mendes, Justin Bieber was there. I mean, there were a bunch of other A-list celebrities that were there. Yeah, they all happened to be at the same exact place that I was at. Okay, so now it's time to jump right into the specifics. The shuttles. Now, taking a shuttle mostly applies to people who are staying at a hotel during the weekend, but there's also some other people who end up finding a way of taking a shuttle if they're not staying at a hotel. The shuttle is going to be your best friend getting in and out of Coachella. You're mostly guaranteed to get a shuttle that's always on time, and you don't have to worry about sitting through traffic, and you get there at a pretty reasonable time. Some people who do have shuttle passes but are not staying at hotels for whichever weekend they're attending, those people tend to stay in Airbnbs, or some of them are probably not renting any places to stay for whichever weekend they're going to. What those people would end up doing is they would call an Uber and they would have them get dropped off at any of the nearest shuttle pickup locations. Now, most of you have to take into account that a shuttle pass costs $120, which leads right into my next topic, and that is cost. One thing for sure is Coachella is not cheap, and it's not just attending the festival itself. It's everything else that's surrounding it, such as hotels, Airbnbs, transportation, airfare, food, and whatever else that are considered expenses for Coachella. Now, cost is a huge concern. If you're planning on staying at a hotel or an Airbnb for whichever weekend you wish to attend, don't expect to pay retail for that weekend. The prices are just astronomical. I know it's crazy as it sounds, but the demand is just at an all-time high. I bought my passes in June of last year, and as soon as the festival announced their dates for this year's Coachella, that's when the prices for every hotel and Airbnb imaginable in that specific location increased their prices. I stayed at the JW Marriott in Desert Springs, California, and it was such a beautiful resort. This was definitely by far one of my favorite hotels I've ever stayed at of all time. We booked this hotel months and months in advance. We're talking late summer of 2022. Our hotel was 25 minutes away from Empire Polo Club with the shuttle, and it was very convenient getting in and out of there with the shuttle itself. Airfare is also very expensive. Flying directly into Palm Springs International Airport is going to cost you a fortune. As an alternative, what Gabriel and I ended up doing, instead of flying directly into Palm Springs, we flew into San Diego, and that just saved us so much money. The only downside of flying directly into San Diego is Palm Springs is 2.5 hours away from San Diego. We ended up renting a car from San Diego and vice versa when we had to leave from Palm Springs. The drive itself was not bad at all. I've also learned that tons of other people did the same exact thing too, flying into San Diego. Some people even drove all the way from Los Angeles and some other cities nearby Palm Springs. If you take an Uber going into the festival and leaving the festival, it's going to cost you a lot of money. I talked to some people that stayed 5 miles from where the festival would happen, and some of those people would pay prices up to $200. That's how desperate people are just to get back home. Even Uber drivers hate driving for Coachella because it's just that overwhelming. Not just Ubers, but there's also tons of independent drivers at the Empire Polo Club just waiting to pick up some people and charge outrageous prices. So just be aware about that. All right, now food and drinks at Coachella. They're also going to cost you an arm and a leg. I bought a lemonade there that cost me $15. The lemonade was pretty good, but definitely not worth the $15. I also got a chicken sandwich that cost $19. $19 for one chicken sandwich. And I also got a macaroni and grilled chicken bowl that costs $17. Of course, in this economy that we're in right now, it's just outrageous. Bottom line is, everything is expensive at Coachella, and this is something that you don't want to underestimate. Okay, since I covered costs briefly, I want to get into my next topic, and that is water. It is impossible finding water at Coachella. It's so ironic because we're in the desert and there's no stores to be found that you can buy water. But there are a bunch of water refill stations at Coachella. But you also have to remember, there's not that many people that bring any refillable water bottles with them. So if you want to buy water, you have to go all the way to the end of the festival. And you have to walk towards the Indio Central Market. And that's where most other restaurants are. And there's only one stand where you can buy water. And that is at the coffee shop. A water bottle costs $2. And that's the only cheapest thing there at Coachella. It sucks that people have to go all the way to the end of the music festival just to buy water. And to think that none of the lemonade stations even have water, but they need water to make their lemonade. So why not also sell water at the lemonade stands too? It sounds logical, right? Guys, just a disclaimer. I'm not hating on Coachella at all. I'm just bringing up the facts and just raising some awareness. So most of you who are planning on going to Coachella in the future can have an open mind and at least know what to expect. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is their record store that they have, and that is Record Safari. Record Safari was probably one of my favorite things I got to visit at Coachella. They had thousands of different vinyls at that store. A lot of people were in there browsing all the different titles that they had. It was just a cool experience. I ended up picking up 3 records myself, and it was just so cool going into that store. The cool thing Record Safari does for you, if you do end up buying records at their store, they actually hold on to your records for you, so you don't have to walk all over the festival with your records in hand. I think it's very cool of them to do that because it's just less stress and just less weight on your hands. So once they hold on to your records for you, you can pick them up any of the 3 days that you're at the festival, so that's just very cool in them. Alright, the most important topic, I should have mentioned this earlier in the video, and that is the weather. Granted, you're in the desert, so during the day, it's going to be blazing hot. Since you're going to be under the sun for the first half of the day, it's important to put on some sunscreen, otherwise you're gonna get burned. Luckily, I didn't end up getting burned, but you're also going to sweat a lot. Also at night, it gets very cold. So Friday night, in my opinion, was the coldest out of the entire weekend. Right before Bad Bunny was about to start his set, it started dropping so much. Definitely bring a sweater with you. That was the one mistake I made, was not bringing a sweater, but it was only cold for Friday night. Saturday and Sunday night wasn't as bad. Since I talked about the weather, this leads right into my next topic, and that is the dust. The dust at Coachella is no joke. Your boy got affected by the dust on the first night of Coachella. It wasn't as too bad, but it did get to its point where I had to put on my bandana. So at night, that's when it started to affect me. My throat was starting to get scratchy and my nose was running a bit, and I knew that was my cue to put on my bandana. During the day, it wasn't bad at all because that's when people were just starting to get to the festival. But at night, on the other hand, that's when you have tens of thousands of people there and the dust was just creeping up on me. But Saturday and Sunday, I didn't feel the need for me to put on my bandana. But the dust is something to keep in mind, and it's something to not take lightly about. The next thing I want to talk about is the merchandise at Coachella. Everybody hypes about the merch, and this is something that everybody is trying to get their hands on. On the very first day of Coachella, everybody peeled off to the merch stand and was waiting to get their hands on a piece of merch. As soon as Gabriel and I first stepped foot into the festival after we passed security, oh my god, the line for merch was so bad. It was completely packed inside the tents. The average wait time to get merch from there was 4 hours, and there was no chance that we were gonna wait that long on the first day. But we did end up getting merch on the second day, and the wait was not as bad compared to the first day. The reason why it's always packed at the merch stand on the first day of Coachella is you got a handful of resellers that are trying to grab a piece of merch and resell it online. And you also got the other half of people trying to get merch for any of the headliners. So Bad Bunny, for example, it was pretty packed. He had his own merch stand. It wasn't as bad, but it was still completely packed to the brim. You're mostly better off waiting to buy merch on either Saturday or Sunday, or just waiting to buy them online. But it all depends on what you're trying to get. The next topics are the outfits and walking. It's already known that most people go all out for Coachella. Myself included, I went all out, but it wasn't as extravagant though. But my outfits were pretty cool. The best thing I can recommend is find something that would be comfortable to wear, because you got a handful of people that go all out with their outfits and they end up not being comfortable. For example, from the types of shoes that they wear, from the types of pants that they wear, it's all about comfortability, which leads into what I want to talk about next, and that's walking. You are going to be doing a lot of walking at the festival, so it's a good idea to wear sneakers because you want your feet to be comfortable and not get blistered. A bunch of women that are at the festival tend to wear boots, some wear high heels, some wear some other types of shoes, and it ends up hurting their feet. So I'm not the one to judge on whatever people decide to wear at the festival. You got some people that wear designer brands and it ends up getting ruined at the festival. I think that's a pretty bad idea to wear something expensive and then it ends up getting ruined by the end of the day. So that's why you want to wear something comfortable, you want to wear something cheap, and just something that just looks pretty good and you won't get worried about it getting ruined. So at Coachella, there's over 100,000 people, and once you leave right after the very last act, aka the headliner, you won't be getting back to where you're staying up until 3 o'clock in the morning. Walking out of the festival felt like an eternity, but it was all worth it at the same time. But if you do want to beat the traffic, you have to make the choice and risk of leaving super early to avoid getting stuck in all of the foot traffic at the festival. The last thing I want to cover in this video are the after parties. If I'm being completely honest, I don't think going to an after party is worth it. Why? Because it's just more money on top. A bunch of people ended up going to Neon Carnival, some other after parties, I can't think of their names at the top of my head, but it's just too much, not just money-wise, but just traveling. It's just a lot to factor all of these things. You're just better off staying at Coachella. But they are pretty cool, but it's just not worth it in my opinion. There's also the Revolve Music Festival, and Revolve is gravitated towards influencers, and I believe that's an invite-only festival, but I also knew a bunch of people who ended up going to the Revolve Music Festival. Okay, that pretty much wraps up everything I wanted to cover about Coachella. Overall, I had such an incredible experience going to my very first Coachella, and I'm definitely going back there again, and it's definitely not going to be my last Coachella, that's for sure. And for any of you watching who have been to Coachella, leave a comment below and share your experience of what it was like going to Coachella. Okay, well this officially wraps up the video. Don't forget to give this video a like for more content like this. Hit the bell for notifications whenever I post a new video. If you're new to my channel, don't forget to subscribe for more content. And other than that, I'll catch you guys all in the next video. I'm out.